Michael, great victory, one which you talked about, and you must have been very proud of the performance, back-to-back wins, clean sheets. But the team performance was the thing I think that most fans liked, and the fact that you mentioned that there were other things that you could work on. Do you mind sharing what those other things might be?
Yeah, I think when you look back on your team's performance, you never find the perfect performance. There's always things that you're striving to do better, whether it's set pieces for or against, whether it's retention of the ball at throw-ins, and I just felt we maybe lost a little bit when Tyrese went off. We maybe lost a wee bit of our threat a little bit, but that's natural. It's hard for Lee coming on in that situation as well. But I probably over the game, I felt if we had taken care of the ball a little better, and maybe 3 or 4 occasions in particular that we've looked back at, we would have created similar opportunities to the one we scored from, similar to the chance we had in the second half. And when you're away from home and you know that possibly the opposition are going to be dominant in possession, it's really important to maximise those opportunities. So that would be areas where I think from being on the night a counter-attacking team, just being able to be a little bit more decisive with the opportunities that we had.
And presumably you've worked on that in training this week, and now we have a difficult game. You say they're all difficult. We know they're all difficult. But Swansea haven't lost since they played Brentford in December, so it's going to be a tough game, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. Good form, good team as well. Some very good young players in their squad as well, and obviously they're pushing for playoffs and promotion, and have been there for pretty much all the season. So yeah, it'll be a tough game. I think we have to be prepared to be disciplined as well. I think we have to be prepared that they will have the ball. It won't be a case of that. We have to make sure we stop them play as well, and then obviously influence our own control and our own dominance on the game. And that's at times at home we find it a challenge, and when we're in possession at times. But tomorrow, it's a big game for us, because obviously 3 points is massive. It takes us to above the 2 immediate teams above us who won't be playing, and puts a little bit more daylight between us and the teams below us. So there's a lot at stake.
Joe Allen's already mentioned that you're looking up the table rather than down, and Tom Ince has said that the group has now got more of a togetherness. I'm not sure whether you can quantify it, but how hard have you had to work to get the players into the situation now where there must be confidence in the team? And you've talked about a young, hungry group, but there's certainly a togetherness that wasn't there when you first arrived.
Yeah, I think it's difficult for me to sort of comment. The group, I think from when I come in, the fact that we won the first 2 games was a big factor, a big help. It's always difficult when you come in and you have a big group, because ultimately you have to leave people out, and that is, I suppose, erodes building that harmony within a squad and that togetherness within a squad. Obviously, with the squad trimmed down, some players on the periphery of it now, in terms of we have a much smaller training squad of like 20 players max. That gives us the opportunity, I think, to build a better culture is the wrong word, but a better feeling within the group. And the younger players, it's allowed them to get around it, because younger players, when possibly they're not playing, are less despondent about not playing. They're happy to be involved around the group. They want to push to get into the team as well, and certainly having the likes of Sorensen and Goy and Belinden around it have helped. Jordan Thompson has come in and energised, very similar, has come in, looked at the situation and sees it as a real opportunity. And I just felt that possibly when we came in, the group was too big, and players didn't see it like that. Too many players were looking at opportunities elsewhere, and that's not what we needed. So yeah, I think we have got a good group now. There's still a lot of work to be done. We'd still like to be better in so many areas, but the important thing is that they've applied themselves very, very well, and not only the games but in training also.
I don't want to ask you too much about the transfer window, because I sense you get sick of it very quickly. And so you should, but are you still hopeful that you'll get some of these players that maybe aren't around the group now training with the first team out of the club?
Well, yeah, I think so. We've had situations of players who two players, for example, Mark Duffy and Scott Hogan, who are here on loan and haven't played under me very much at all. Scott had a little bit, Mark's not been involved at all, and for their own interest it's better that they move on, I think, and I think they know that. So yeah, I think that's important. We've been quite selective in the window. I think a lot of teams have. I think a lot of teams were chasing the same players, and possibly we weren't in the best position because of our league position to be at the front of that queue. And now as we come into the last week, we'll be in a position where we probably don't need to do anything silly and react and do anything silly. We have looked at opportunities, and I think possibly most of the deals that will be done in this week will probably be either swaps or loan swaps between clubs, and so those things we may or may not consider. But equally, if the window shuts and we have the players that we have in the building at the minute, we'll go forward with that, and I have enough belief in those players.
I say I'm not going to ask you anything, but now you've just led me on to the fact a lot of supporters will be surprised if you don't get a left back in, because obviously they feel we're struggling for a left back. Would it be fair to say you're still looking for a left back?
Well, we've looked at all positions. I've been pleased with Bruno since he came back in. Stephen Ward's a very experienced left back, and this window is extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult to get the player that you want, and then ultimately, the more players you bring into the building, the more difficult you make it for yourself in the summer, and it's trying to get the balance right on that. So yeah, look, we've looked at all positions. Left back is a position we've looked at, but equally, I think, as I say, with what we have, Josh Timon is back now as well as a young fullback. We have to see if he can push through between now and the end of the season as well. But I think we have a lot of experience in Bruno and Stephen, and I'm not sure that we would get anyone of that calibre, and often in this window, what essentially you get are players who aren't in anyone else's team. Like, if you're looking for a striker, you're pretty much going to have to take a striker that hasn't been scoring in the first half of the season, or his club aren't going to let him go. So that's the challenge that we find. So look, if the right player comes along and it's not position specific, that we think can strengthen the group, has the right attributes in terms of character as well, I think it's very important that we bring people in that can deal with the situation that we're in as well. Then we look to do it.
And injury-wise, Ty came off, and Nick Powell appeared to have a slight knock. How are we injury-wise?
But Therese won't be fit for tomorrow. We're optimistic that possibly Derby will look at that. But Nick's fine. Everywhere else we're good, other than obviously Ryan Shawcross still isn't ready.
So looking on to this week, because you've got a very quick turnaround again, and you see other matches where people are pulling hamstrings, strains, etc. How difficult is it? People don't seem to understand how hard it is for people to recover after such a busy Christmas programme. And have you got in that mindset looking forward to Friday?
Yeah, I think we have. We've managed we're very specific in the training, the length of the training time, and that's always a challenge because you want to do more. You want to spend as much as you can in terms of developing the team, getting what we want from the team, and getting the players to understand what we expect from them as well. But equally, you have to be mindful of where they are physically as well. And the championship is very challenging mentally, I think, for players as well. So we've monitored the training very closely. When there's been opportunities to rest and give players days off their feet, we've done that. And you kind of end up, when you're playing like two training groups, obviously the players who are maybe not starting, training for a little bit longer and doing different stuff from the players that are starting. So, but yeah, I think we've been fairly good with injuries, to be honest. And touch wood, that remains the case, because the consequence of not having a huge amount of players and players leaving is that you can be slightly vulnerable. But equally, I think that's a better scenario for us to be in than obviously having abundance and a bloated squad. So yeah, we just have to manage it. We've got 18 games to go, and equally, every one of those games will be physically demanding on the players. But I think, as I say, we've been pretty good at managing that to date.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Supporters always get very excited about bringing in new players, transfers at the end of the window and this sort of thing. But you've got a winning team now, winning squad, and as you say, you don't want to grow the squad anymore. Surely the temptation now is to sort of not bring any players in between now and the end of the window.
Yeah, look, I'm not actively spending every minute of every day trying to get players. It's a case of in this window. It's a case of what becomes available, and as I said, the reality of the situation is that more often than not, the opportunity will be to take a loan player or take a younger player from a lower level, as we did with Jordan, with a point to prove. Or you're taking someone that hasn't done particularly well at their existing club, or that's the only reason you get them. That's the truth. If you look at strikers that are being offered, they're strikers that have yet to score this season. So it doesn't exactly, whet your appetite to take a player like that. So it has to be the right player that, in terms of where he is. We do have quite a lot of experienced players in our squad, obviously, and players with experience of the Championship. So again, that's a factor in terms of, would you just be taking in another player of the same calibre of the player you have? And that's not what we need. The players that we need, if we bring them in, first of all, can they improve the starting 11? Can they add to the group in terms of the age profile of the player as well? And that's the line that we've pursued. We've missed out on a few. We missed out on some of the younger ones that we went after, but we knew at the end of the day that they would be hard to get. But we thought, we'll try and get the ones that we really want. That hasn't been the case. But equally, the group that we have continued to work well and continued to win games. So you're right. If the window shuts and no business is done, then we'll just manage through between now and the end of the season with what we have.
Of course, Swansea tomorrow. What's been happening before you arrived, particularly, we'd get a good result, and then we'd have a game on the following Saturday, and we'd blow it. And this is what I think a lot of supporters are particularly concerned about, particularly as we're the only Championship game on the day, and it's a vital game to, as you say, boost Stoke up the table. But Swansea aren't the sort of side they were earlier in the season. They've only had 2 wins in 6. I think you've got 3 wins in 6. So surely you have the upper hand in this game.
I think there's many ways to look at form and Championship, and teams go through lulls all the time, and maybe Swansea are in. I think the key is not to stay in one of those lulls for too long. For example, we won our first 2 games and then lost the next 3, and it was important for us to get out of that scenario. That was the first experience we had of that. But we equally have teams that have won 1 game in 8, 1 game in 10. I think over the last 8 games, our form would make us 4th in the table, which is good. That shows we're going in the right direction. But I think any of the teams, and what I've learned, like Swansea they're still in a strong position despite possibly not being on the best run of form in the season. So they know, and when you're in that situation, you're anxious to address it. You're anxious to get the 3 points to turn it around. You always feel that the next game that you win will hopefully set you up on a little bit of consistency. We're in exactly the same situation now, because we're looking at putting 3 points on the board tomorrow, which then people will add to our level of consistency as well. So yeah, I think when you come in, very much the game. Form really, I wouldn't say it's irrelevant, but it doesn't have the same significance, I think, that some people put on it. For example, West Brom are still top of the table, despite I don't think they've won in 5 or 6, but they're still top. So that's the nature of the league we're in.
One thing about form is that you managed to achieve a lot of clean sheets in recent games, something against Stoke haven't seen for quite some time, and I think that's had a lot to do with the confidence restored to Danny Barton, Liam Lindsay. How's that been achieved? Has that sort of you've worked on that sort of confidence, or is it really just a matter of drilling in training?
No, we worked hard on the players defensively, on the shape of the team. Not so much just the back 4, but we've worked hard on how we are out of possession. And I think you have to be a good team out of possession before you become a good team with possession, and it's not always the easiest type of work to do with the players, but I think that's something that we've worked hard on. We've worked hard at stopping the opposition play as well, in terms of how we stop the opposition play, because I think we are a good team when we win the ball in the opposition half. Where we're challenged a little bit is how we build the game and get it into the opposition half at this minute in time is an area that I still believe there's room for improvement. But Danny and Liam have been very responsive, as have young Nathan. At the moment they're essentially the 3 centre-backs we're operating with Ryan still injured. there's confidence. I think Jack has a lot of his confidence back as well from difficult time earlier in the season. So all of that adds to defenders. It's always easier for defenders as well when you're winning games, and the team looks like it's difficult to beat. And I think that as a unit, the team has become stronger, and certainly the players that you mentioned have made a significant contribution to that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Cheers. Thanks.